All right, it is 12 o'clock, and I have started a recording, so this will be available uploaded on the Wait Tech's YouTube channel, I believe, in about a week or so. If anyone's interested in uh, checking out again, or anyone who didn't make it can check it out later. So I think we will go ahead and try to get started here while people are filtering in. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the this year's Continuing Success Conference. This is our first workshop of the day. Thank you all for joining. As you might see on screen, and as you probably know, this is all about selling yourself. And my name is Hamilton Whittle. I'm a math and science tutor with the ILC, and I will be hosting this discussion today. I do hope that as we go, we get a good amount of creative input from everyone who's here in the chat as well. I do have a couple of exercises for us to hopefully get to today to kind of brainstorm. And if anyone has any interesting thoughts or comments as we go, feel free to share them in the chat at any time. So to get us started, let's talk a little bit about what we are hoping to get out of this workshop here today. First, we're going to want to understand what it really means to sell ourselves. In addition, we want to understand some things we might want to avoid if we try to take that phrase a little bit too seriously. We're also going to try to break down how to prepare and tailor ourselves on both paper, like our resume, and in person for interviews for any job we end up applying to. And ideally, this is a process we would want to do for each individual job that we do end up applying to. Then together, we're going to try to brainstorm some possible ways to sell our skills that help us stand out from similarly qualified applicants. But in the end, our ultimate goal is to see how to best tell our story with a narrative that keeps in mind the needs of the company and what skills are going to be most applicable for each application. So throughout our discussion today, it is going to be important to keep in mind that we all here have wildly different backgrounds and experiences. The jobs that we are going to be applying to or trying to get into might be in completely different fields as well. But what we do have in common here is being in community college and looking to improve ourselves. So much of our discussion today is going to be from that perspective of college students. We might not have the longest or most relevant work history all the time to the fields that we are trying to break into, but that doesn't stop us from being able to sell our best selves to that job. If we do end up having a bit more experience to pull from, then that's a bonus. But we'll be focused on using whatever experiences we do have to still be able to sell ourselves. Everyone here has an education experience that they can pull from. So that's kind of going to be what our kind of key perspective we're going to try to approach this from. But maybe some of you have also had jobs in the past. Maybe it's not necessarily related to what you're trying to get into, but you can still end up using that to contribute to your sales pitch. Then maybe some of us have even have some families that we've been taking care of. And maybe even some of us have been juggling multiple of these things at once that we can try to pull from. But what we want to realize here today is that we all have transferable skills that we've been building up. And we'll get into those shortly. And we'll be delving into how to tell companies our stories that illustrate these skills and our core values as a person as well. Okay. So now let's discuss a little bit more in detail what exactly it means to sell ourselves as we're trying to get a job. Well, selling yourself is the basis of the hiring process, with the company deciding whether to be putting money into you and your services. There is a bit of a risk to taking selling yourselves too literally or too far. So what exactly do we want to be doing to best sell ourselves? If I had to put it simply, it means bringing your best self forward. Doing so takes a bit of preparation and awareness, which we'll be getting into today. But at the end of the day, it's about you being you. You want to be telling and showing your who you are with this narrative that keeps the following things in mind. You want to be asking yourself questions like, how and why would you be an asset to the company? What about you would be appealing to the company? These kind of questions and sticking to those themes and that narrative of everything should serve a purpose to the answering those questions, and giving concrete details on telling that to the company is all about what we're here to see today and what we want to accomplish in order to best and effectively sell ourselves. What we don't want to be doing is fabricating any experience or making unrealistic promises. If we do have a skill that the company is looking for, what we want to be doing to sell that skill is digging into our own history, um, talking about our experiences and telling our story to show how we've used that skill, how we built up that skill, and so on. These skills, and keeping in mind the questions we just mentioned earlier, asking ourselves what would add value to the company, um, become the what I would refer to as the themes of our narrative. Now, words like narrative and themes are going to be words I toss around a lot in our talk here today. Full disclosure, I am, as a math and science person, not exactly natural at constructing themes and sticking to narratives. It doesn't come to me naturally. And I'm betting that some of you here today might not be confident in that either. But when it comes to selling ourselves, I can't really think of any more appropriate way to put the process. So after today, hopefully all of us here will have a better idea of what kind of thought we want to be putting into each of our job applications when we're assembling this narrative. So for the rest of our time here today, we will be digging into what I call the key moments that play a part in the selling yourself process. It, of course, begins with the job listing that you've chosen to apply for. Now, you may think that this is a very small part of the process. You just pick the job and you go in and do the application, make your resume, try to get an interview. But everything we will be discussing actually branches off of this key moment of the job listing. This is where what I was referring to as the themes of our narrative get established. So we're going to be taking special care here with some group exercises when we talk about this job listing. Then, following the job listing, as you might expect, the next key moments include the resume, um, and how it ends up getting used in the application process, followed by the preparation for the interview. Hopefully, we've managed to snag an interview, but we do want to make sure to take extra care to prepare for it, followed by the interview itself. Our discussions today will focus on the selling yourselves aspect of each of these. So while we will detail several things regarding resumes and interviews, keep in mind that we won't really be able to dig incredibly deep into how to write a resume or polishing our communication skills for our interview here today. But if you are interested in that stuff, Wake Tech is happy to offer assistance outside of this conference. So feel free to look into Wake Tech's career services if you would like some extra information, kind of polish those skills on your own time. Okay. All right. So, as we mentioned, the job listing stage is about more than just going through the listings and finding the jobs you want to be applying to and then just moving on, not to look at those listings again. It is at this stage that we want to really dig in and establish the themes of our narrative that are going to permeate through each stage from then on. So, what are these themes that we keep mentioning and what should they be? Well, as we read over the job listing, we aren't just like checking over the qualifications or the details of the job to make sure like it's something that we're interested in. But once we have decided to apply, we want to go in and really analyze the type of person that it seems like the company is looking for in that job listing. Once we have decided to apply, we want to pick out what traits and what skills seem like they're going to impress the hiring manager? What are they looking for in that job listing? Now, oftentimes there is a bulleted list of the skills that they're looking for to help us along to kind of just lay them out nice and easily for us. But the deeper we do read into the job listing, the better of a picture we'll be able to paint of ourselves that the company will end up taking an interest in. Now, being college students, you might feel sometimes that you're fit for a job, but you're worried that your work experience is still kind of sparse or might be unrelated to what job you're trying to get into. But by digging into the job listing, you're going to be able to come up with a lot more to say about yourselves than you initially thought by focusing on what are called transferable skills. These transferable skills are just what they sound like. They're skills that you've been building up throughout your lifetime, whether they be from school, work, or even like hobbies in your personal life, that can then be transferred over and used in your new prospective job. We all have certain transferable skills. While some of them we might be a little bit more proficient in the others, we want to kind of prioritize which ones we feel like we have and which ones we picked out as the themes from the job listing that it sounds like the job is looking for. So on screen here, I do have a kind of variety of what you could consider transferable skills that companies might be looking for in their new hires. There's just a few of them here, maybe some kind of common ones. Definitely not all the ones that you could consider as transferable skills or ones that jobs are looking for. They can generally range from what you might consider as personality traits, like open-mindedness, to skills you might have been using here in your college, like time management or problem solving, or even slightly more technical skills that might involve some actual like studies, so something like proficiency with computers, numbers, reading and writing, etc. We might be familiar with many of these skills, and what we want to discuss today is how to best sell them to hiring managers. The first step to this is going to be making sure that the skills we advertise are the ones that are desirable to the company. Um, After we prioritize which skills we want to be selling, we want to be able to back up those skills or whichever ones we're claiming to have. So just to illustrate the kind of process that we're trying to accomplish with these in this job listing stage and picking out our themes and picking out skills and what it seems like the company is looking for. I do have the a small snippet of a general copy editor listing that I like to go through. And then on the next exercise, we're going to try to get a little bit more of a longer and more in-depth job listing for us all to pick out together. But just to kind of have a warm up here to show what the process looks like, here we have a job brief on a copy editor. We are looking for a copy editor to join our team and work with a team of writers to ensure all content adheres to our organization's guidelines. The copy editor's responsibilities include proofreading, editing, and working with writers to deliver quality content. Ultimately, you will be working with a team of writers and designers to ensure our content meets our brands and guidelines, and all copy is accurate and free of grammatical errors. So if I'm looking at this as just a small piece of a larger job listing that I'm wanting to apply to, uh, what should I be reading into it? Like, what are the notes I should be taking on this job listing that kind of inform the rest of my application process? Well, looking through this, I did pick up on multiple times they're mentioning working with a team. There's a team of writers, working with writers, work with a team of writers and designers, etc. So all these things point to me that they are looking for someone capable of teamwork and collaboration. So I want to make special note of that. And for now, at least at this stage of the process, I'm just kind of making note of these themes. I can think about going in depth on them, how to sell my own skills for those later. but just what am I trying to establish as what I want to be focusing on for the rest of this process. So teamwork and collaboration, one thing kind of jumps out at me right away. But then there's some other things that are a little bit more subtle. You're trying to go through all this processes in this job where you're adhering to certain guidelines, you're making sure things are accurate. So you're trying to juggle like keeping a few things in mind as you're going through and reading these things, whatever you're having to go and read through for this job. So to me, that kind of points to the attention to detail skill. Particularly, it's in under the framework of like reading things. So if I'm a good reader and I'm attentive to detail, that might be a skill that I want to focus on, that I want to advertise as part of my application here. Then finally, some other things we can pick up on are maybe a bit more of on the technical side. We're proofreading and editing. We're checking for grammar. So that's a bit more of the technical side of like reading and writing comprehension. So in particular, probably reading proficiency is something I want to be knowledgeable about. Understanding grammar, sentence structure, that kind of thing. So that's something that if I feel like I'm kind of confident in, that's another kind of technical skill I can try to advertise for this particular job. So this was just kind of a split up paragraph out of a job listing that kind of describes what the job is about. But just from that, I'm able to pick out 3 key things that I might want to be focusing on, and how to go into the detail about those is something we'll be discussing as we get deeper into this presentation here today. So now that we've kind of seen the kind of thought process we want to be putting into this job listing stage, let's have our first exercise of this workshop. I'd like for us all to kind of glance through this job listing that I have here. We have a bookkeeper for a construction company. And in the chat, or if you want to kind of raise your hand to unmute yourself, kind of share our thoughts on what kind of person it seems like they are looking for. Can we identify the skills that we might want to be focusing on to advertise ourselves with, and if we were trying to be applying to this job? So everyone might not be particularly interested in being a bookkeeper, but we're just trying to get practice with reading these job listings and paying attention to the key skills and the key personality traits or the key aspects of ourselves we might want to advertise or prioritize for this particular job. And then later on, we'll have an exercise on like going into a little bit more detail on how we could go in and advertise those. So either read through or just kind of skim it a little bit and let me know what everyone's thoughts might be if you want to participate. All right, Harold, I do see your hand raised if you want to unmute.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So definitely they're looking for someone that's have experience with accounting and experience with accounts receivable, having to process and process account receivables and accounts payable. Is some of the things that I see, and familiar with a lot of accounting software.
Yeah, very good observation. So obviously we need some kind of accounting experience, and there's a lot of software talk in this particular listing. And I know everyone here today might not necessarily have that kind of experience and be able to sell it. So is there anything else that looks like maybe a more kind of general skill that if we were just considering applying to this, like even if we didn't have that kind of experience, any other skills we can kind of take out of this? Like just like in the warm-up exercise, I kind of noted that teamwork was something they were looking for. That's kind of a general skill, not necessarily specific to that particular job. Any kind of things like that we might be able to kind of read out from this, just kind of skimming through. Flexibility or adaptability, organization skills. Those are good. Yeah. I do see a hand raised if someone wanted to talk.
Yep. Sorry, I just want to make sure the question was like what else could we use? Like what skills that we could use particularly for this kind of job, like bookkeeping, right?
Yeah. Like, what kind of skills does it look like they're asking for? What kind of skills are they looking for from this job listing?
All right. I just wanted to be sure. I was just thinking like it's like receipts. It's all about money and about a bit of software usage as well. So maybe someone's
Yeah,
like a math whiz, someone that's typically like counting the drawer, like constantly keeping track of money. I was thinking of something like that.
sure. Yeah, definitely making sure you're handling things properly in terms of like all the numbers that are representing money in this case. So yeah, definitely. As we kind of mentioned earlier on, we're definitely interested in, or this job is definitely interested in someone who has a little bit of confidence or experience with handling numbers, handling making sure you're keeping track of all the accounts and valuable numbers that are money. Let's see, what else do we have in chat here? A person needs to be self-motivated and like to work independently. That's very good, Silas. Responsibility overall, since apparently you will be working on your own. Yep, very good. So yeah, we've gotten some good stuff there. There's definitely some heavy emphasis on software and accounting in this particular job listing. But let me move on to my next slide here. So over here, I kind of have what I had kind of picked out on my own time to prepare for this exercise. And as we had, people had already mentioned, yes, there is definitely some um, software skills I have listed here as like computer skills. Um, there's definitely some necessary requirement of being able to be confident in numbers and keeping track of numbers. But those aren't the only things that we want to be paying attention to. Those are only some of the things. So obviously, if you are someone who is good at those things, you want to be advertising them. That's not all you want to be advertising. So some things I noted here is that, as someone also pointed out in the chat, you want to be if you're organized, you want to be able to sell that, or you want to be making note of that. That kind of comes from keeping track of records and receipts, invoices, and tax payments. That's kind of what I read as, well, that rings to me as organization. So if you're organized, maybe list that as a skill. And then when you go into the interview, give examples and tell stories about why how you are organized, or times that you have been organized on the job or in school. If you do feel like you have computer skills or are good with software, but maybe you're only familiar with a few of the ones they list, you might be able to detail how quickly you've learned software in the past. So they're not too worried about you being able to adapt on the job. Confidence with handling numbers, we've mentioned that a few times. Attention to detail, that kind of goes hand in hand with being able to kind of keep track of all these different invoices and all these different things that you're going to have to be keeping track of. So attention to detail, not just being good with numbers. That is kind of its own skill that you can join hand in hand with the numbers. Obviously, if you do have kind of prior bookkeeping or accounting experience, that is something that you would want to point out to them or go into detail about. They also mentioned that in addition to the job experience, maybe if you have some classes that you've taken that you can go into detail about, that might be something that you can make use of. I think we've had some mentions of something similar to time management here. That kind of points out right here for us. They basically say, hey, have time management skills. So that's something that if you do have those, make note of that. And we had someone point out earlier, we want to be self-motivated. That is something that is kind of pointed out here. They are looking for someone who works independently. That's something else people were noting in the chat. So if you feel like you're a self-starter, you're self-motivated, make note of that. Bring that to their attention as you're doing the application process. So hopefully with this exercise, we were able to kind of get an idea of, yeah, there are a whole lot of surface level things that are directly related to the job, like being able to do math and being able to have all these software skills. But try to go a little bit deeper too. Make note of those more general skills, because if you can keep those as track of your themes of this application process, this narrative we're making, that is what ends up helping sell yourself all the more. And also another thing that I did want to mention here, since no one had brought attention to it, you might want to pay attention to what audience you're trying to sell these skills for as well. Yes, this is a bookkeeper job. A lot of companies need bookkeepers, but if you have any like extra knowledge beyond bookkeeping that is relevant to that particular company or whatever that company does at large, that could be an extra little benefit for yourself as well to kind of set yourself apart. So yes, while this is a bookkeeping job, you can think to yourself, do I have any general construction knowledge as well? You don't need to necessarily have done construction, but do you know a little bit about like what kind of time frames construction is done in, or any kind of construction terminology? That kind of stuff can be invaluable, like knowing your audience, knowing who you're trying to sell your bookkeeping skills to kind of set yourself apart a little bit more. But yeah, I hope everyone got something out of that exercise. We'll have another one where we go into a little bit more detail on maybe what we could list as possible stories to tell to sell these skills. But for now, let's continue onwards to the resume. So now that we've come through our job listing, gotten an idea of kind of the themes and the narrative that we want to be telling, that's when we can start to build our resume around that narrative. As we mentioned earlier, we won't really be going into the finer details of how to write a resume, but we will be discussing how or what can help sell ourselves as part of that resume. Now, do make note that a resume is meant to be concise and to the point. So the information that we put should always stay relevant to the job we are applying to. At the beginning of a resume, we can put a couple sentences to help recruiters get an idea of who we are, kind of what we are trying to emphasize as part of that job application. This is often called an opening value statement, which, again, we want to make sure that is sticking to that narrative. What about us is most relevant to that position? What would make the company kind of value us as a potential employee? So you don't want to really go off topic. You can kind of list yourself in a whole bunch of different ways, kind of frame yourself in different ways. Try to always, as you're writing your resume, think about, how can I frame myself for this job? We also want to be making sure to use certain keywords and the skills that we found from the job listing, those themes we just established in our exercise. That can help make it help our resume make it through those kind of initial scans of like just kind of the base skills. What are they looking for? You can have for those skills kind of just a dedicated skill section to just list them without too much detail. Just kind of list, hey, if you're organized, list organization as a skill. Just be sure as you're listing these skills, stay honest and don't list anything that you can't back up. For recent college graduates or current college students, you might have a little bit more to say in your education section than your job history. So on a resume, you can lead with whichever section is kind of the most relevant or you have the most details for. Then be sure to flesh out those sections with the details that we'll be getting into that reflect these skills and the aspects of yourself that reinforce the themes of our narrative. Again, those kind of job listing skills and qualities that we just went through. In particular, to flesh out your education section, you could dig into things beyond your degree and your GPA. If you want to sell multitasking, for example, maybe mention something about how many classes you ended up taking at once in one semester. Maybe you took a whole lot one semester and wanted to kind of bring attention to that. Were you able to keep up with all those simultaneous classes all at once to your satisfaction? Kind of go into detail with that on how you juggled with that. But again, we're trying to stay kind of concise with a resume. So you don't want to like a whole paragraph, maybe 1 or 2 sentences for each kind of bullet point. Or if you're trying to sell teamwork or leadership, try to think back if you had any significant group work you did as part of your education. You can mention what role your group in that was. Again, try to stay concise. Feel free to briefly mention any large projects that you took on during your schoolwork. Be sure, again, to frame any details that you give in ways that serve your narrative. You want to be illustrating specific skills that you've pulled out of that job listing, or you're making seemingly unrelated things relevant to that prospective job duties that you're going to be doing as part of that job. A similar approach can then be taken with any job experience that you end up listing. On resumes, most people tend to list their job duties and their responsibilities, and there is definitely some merit to that, especially when your duties are relevant to the new job. But generally speaking, it is actually better to focus on specific achievements whenever possible, not just your job duties, but specific things that you achieved during your time there. These achievements should ideally be things that you can quantify with like data or numbers. Maybe like something you can say, hey, I did this and we got 10% extra of this. Just kind of quantifiable data if possible. And then if there are ever achievements that you feel like are worth mentioning that could be framed in a relevant way on an application, but they don't really come as part of your prior job experience, or they don't come as part of your education, you can have a dedicated achievement section to list those things, which I'd like to go into a little bit more detail on our next slide. So since achievements can really help sell our resume, I'd like to spend a little bit more time on this achievement section to help us dig deep into what we could be making use of as part of this. Just like how we can flesh out unrelated job history by framing it in a way that sells certain skills, we can also make use of seemingly unrelated achievements if we can frame them in a way that serves our narrative. When we're detailing these achievements, you want to be asking yourselves, like, what skill am I trying to emphasize? How could this company, or how can I show this company how I am valued to them using this achievement? And as all things on a resume, again, stay concise. We want to make sure that we're getting the point across of what we are trying to say, what skills we're trying to sell, get those across quickly, using data whenever possible, but keeping it to the point. Ideally, probably no more than 2 sentences for each achievement. So what kind of achievements could we list, like just outside of school or other job history? What kind of things can we list? Well, we always want to make sure that we're serving in the narrative, so that could vary from job listing to job listing. But just to get some ideas of what we could be going into here, like just what kind of achievements could we be considering as a way to put on our resume to sell certain things? One possibility I just kind of came up with in advance here is think about, have you ever coached a team or anything? Not necessarily a sports team, any kind of team. This could serve skills or serve to sell skills such as leadership or strategic insight, depending on how we frame it. If you wanted to list specific data as part of this achievement, maybe you could mention like how high the team placed after your coaching, or maybe by how much you improved performance of the team compared to what they were doing before you started coaching. Or maybe you could use it to sell like some kind of interpersonal skill by mentioning how you kind of mediated internal disputes in the team. So that's one possibility you could list as in your achievement section. Another possibility is maybe you've built something for a competition at one point, or maybe not a competition, just kind of in your own time. This could sell your ability to work with tools, or maybe your attention to detail, or maybe something about being outgoing and taking on new challenges if you want to sell that. One more possibility that I kind of came up with on my own was maybe you've organized any kind of large scale event, maybe like a fundraiser or a tournament or anything like that. I could see framing something like this to sell skills like organization, multitasking, or even communication, just to name a few. So, as we can see, if we dig deep into our experience, there are a lot more ways to frame certain details or frame certain events in our life that we might have initially considered that can be kind of brought to the attention of the company in a certain way to kind of sell what we are wanting to sell from that job listing. This is why understanding what themes that we want for ourselves from that job listing is so crucial and should be kept in mind the whole way through. All right. So, with any luck, after we've applied and sent in our resume, we've heard back, and now it's time to set up an interview. Chances are it might have been a while since we sent in all our information. We might have even applied to some other places in the meantime. So, all the specifics might have kind of been lost in our memory. So we want to go back and try to, for our first step of preparing, go back over our job listing, see what we put in our resume, kind of just refresh our memory on the themes and of that narrative that we had made for ourselves before we continue on to that interview. Since the interview is going to be our opportunity to go into even more detail than we were able to on our resume, we should spend a little bit more time making sure our themes and our narrative is what it needs to be. To best accomplish this, we should research the company a little bit more. One thing that we should try to look for or try to find is the mission statement of the company. Get an idea of like what are their core values, what kind of public presenting face do they wear, what is their vision for the company. Finding answers to these ends up giving us a little bit more of a direction for our narrative, as well as shows what kind of person that we're going to be meeting with, and what is going to be a genuine interest for the company at large. And we should also try to find things like employee reviews, both for the company in general, but for any kind of similar position in that company that we are trying to get. This will, of course, give us a better idea of whether we want to pursue this particular job. But it can also give us a little bit more insight into what to expect when we are on the job itself, which can then help us come up with any kind of questions or comments that we can try to bring up during the interview to show how much we kind of prepared and how much we kind of want to work with that company. Additionally, finding out who you'll be interviewed by is something that could be helpful. It can kind of let you know what kind of questions to expect out of that interview. Just for an example here, if you're going to be meeting with someone from human resources, they might be a little bit more interested in just your like basic experience and qualifications, kind of expressed in a more kind of plain, matter-of-fact way. Meanwhile, a supervisor that you might be working directly under might be interested in digging a little bit deeper into those, thinking about like how you've acquired your skills, how you handled yourself on the spot, or just what kind of things you plan to bring to that new position, like what you hope to accomplish in that position. Additionally, if we want to prepare as much as we can, we should try to get some questions ready for that interview. Naturally, we might have questions regarding the like specific job duties or the benefits of the job, but try to think about things that you could ask about the company as well. Ask things like who might you all be working with? What kind of growth could you expect out of the company and ourselves? What does the future of the company look like? Asking these kind of questions is a natural way to show that we are interested, not just in getting a job, just like any job, but we are interested in a job there at that company, that we believe that we can provide value there. All right, so after refreshing ourselves on what our themes of our narrative are, we can start putting together a little bit more of a like detailed stories to help sell those themes and those skills. At this point, we want to try to really dig deep into our history, dig deep into our experience, and find those moments of our life where we built up and used these skills and our personal values that we want to be expressing to the person that's going to be interviewing us. We want to get creative here with what these moments could be. The more that you consider, the more you think about, then the more options you have. So you can go through and kind of pick the ones that can be best framed or most relevant to illustrate the skills that you're wanting to advertise or sell to the company, or that you want that you think they want to be hearing about. As you're coming up with these stories, ask yourself what your unique selling points are that you can use those stories to tell. These unique selling points, of course, include your key skills that we've been mentioning and your your accomplishments. But they can also be anything that will feel you feel that will help you set yourself apart from the other applicants. This interview is our chance to go into a bit more detail and really sell these skills that we've claimed on our resume. We don't want to just say we're a hard worker at this point anymore. We want to be able to back that up. These stories and our experiences are what end up being the most powerful part of selling ourselves, as it makes those skills and how we handle ourselves really stick to that person who's interviewing us and make it kind of stand out to the company, be a little bit more memorable. Also, while we can't predict everything that we're going to be asked in an interview, we can prepare responses to certain common interview questions, just so we're ready in case we end up getting asked them in the interview. A very common question that you might hear a lot is something along the lines of, tell me about a time things didn't go as planned and how you handled it. I'm sure many of us here today could come up with plenty of times something didn't go right, or when we were put under pressure. By preparing in advance, we can go through our history, come up with the times that would be most relevant to answering that question, or the times that would be easiest or the best way to frame it for this particular job we're applying to. Our answer to this question, even if we're the same, if you're the same person and you feel like there's one thing that always comes to mind, your answer to this question should be ideally something that varies from job to job, because you want to be picking out the best one for each job. And of course, as we've kind of been reiterating in this presentation, always keep this narrative in mind that we got from the job listing. What are our themes? These stories that we come up with and each possible comment that we are preparing for that interview should serve some kind of purpose that is informed by those key questions we initially asked ourselves and what skills that we've identified from that job listing. Those questions like, what value can I add to this company? What would make me an asset to this company? What about me would this company be interested in? So those kind of themes of our narrative is something we should always be keep in mind as we're coming up with our pre-prepared comments. All right. So selling your skills like problem solving or communication isn't the only ones we can be using these stories for. If you feel like you're still lacking certain relevant work experience, you can kind of lean into that and detail your willingness and ability to learn, um, uh, which is going to be something that the company might be interested in. Like, how willing and able are you to take on new challenges? These aspects can and should be backed up by stories, just like any other skill we're trying to sell. Maybe as part of this new career path, you've had to take classes you weren't really proficient in at first. How did you handle that? Did you adapt and try out new study habits? Did you persevere or use other skills that you can bring up to make your grade a little bit higher than it started out with? How do you apply that to this new job? How can you apply that what you've kind of persevered and learned as you went to this new job? Or maybe you're just naturally curious and you seek out new challenges. Do you have any self-taught skills or hobbies that you could pull stories from to illustrate that you look for like new challenges? Just as an example here to kind of give people an idea of like what could be mentioned here, like what illustrates these kind of things. If I wanted to illustrate my own desire to continue learning in an interview where I'm willing and able to learn quickly and always interested in new things. Personally, I could talk about my time as a graduate student. When I had finished up taking all my physics courses for my degree, I didn't really have any extra classes to take. So what I did, I just ended up taking a few semesters of Japanese, which was completely unrelated, but it was just something I was interested in, and I just could take them as part of my time there. So I could go off and kind of build off that fact and kind of illustrate, hey, I'm just interested in learning. I want to be learning on this job. Once we've gotten a good idea of what aspects of ourselves we are trying to sell to the employer, we want to be putting together a brief self-introduction, often called an elevator pitch. It's called this because, just like it sounds, it's something that should be getting our main selling points across in a timely manner, such as the time it takes to ride an elevator. The general time frame for these elevator pitches is about like between 30 and 60 seconds. And then during this time, we want to be highlighting the kind of main experiences and accomplishments that we want the person interviewing us to hear. As we come up with this elevator pitch, we also want to be injecting our personality into it in order to help sell who we are as a person, not just what we've done. Just like the rest of the interview, we don't want to just be like just reciting word from word or just plainly what could be read off of our resume. We want to be including things like how these experiences have shaped us and how we in turn have gone on to shape our experience. That's how we can kind of think about injecting our personality. Now, where does this elevator pitch come up? There's usually an opportunity at the beginning of an interview where we can kind of freely talk about ourselves, and that's the time for your elevator pitch. That kind of gets a good groundwork laid out for the rest of the interview, and gets kind of a strong start. All right, so yeah, I don't think we have quite enough time for my next exercise, so I think we can come back to that if there is time, but just to make sure we get all the information here today, let me go ahead and skip to this slide where we want to be practicing. So planning things to say during an interview is important, but an interview is a conversation. You don't want to just be reciting everything, and you don't want to be risking freezing up either. So to reduce these moments of hesitation or stuttering or just reducing your stress, you should be practicing these stories that you've come up with. It can also help you get a feel for how long these stories end up being, which can help you get an idea of whether you should be like trimming things down if you feel like they're dragging on too long. A lot of us have also or might also have some reservation when it comes to really talking about ourselves, especially if it's kind of self-promotional. Preparation here is essential in this case, so we have that time to really consider what can and should be said to sell ourselves. Kind of as an aside here, if you've ever worked at a place that has given out like performance reviews of some kind, try to hang on to those or make note of those for times like these. If you feel like you have a trouble coming up with things to say about yourself, go back and see what others have said about you and use that. Especially if there's any like analytical data to make use of, because again, companies and hiring managers really like analytical achievements. I myself am not really the kind of person that's used to talking themselves up or taking credit for things. So during my time here at the ILC, one of my reviews at one point gave me praise for a percent increase of students that were using the ILC for a certain course. When I heard that, naturally, I was kind of humble about it, saying I didn't really know if I could take credit for it. But now, kind of preparing this workshop here, I realize how much of a prime example that is as an achievement to put on my resume, and then during an interview, go into detail about. Like, how did I increase that percentage? What did I do to do that? And tell a story related to that particular achievement. Practicing on talking about these achievements will also naturally help you get an idea of how to talk yourself up. Lastly, for the most effective practice, find another person to help conduct a mock interview with. This can help you find a natural place to work in your stories and also receive some feedback right away from the person who's interviewing you. There are also kind of technological alternatives to practicing interview skills as well. I haven't really looked into those, but they do exist. So Google search might be something that you can do if you're interested in polishing your interview skills. And then they kind of, if you have a webcam, kind of, it works off of that from what I've seen. All right, so at last, we've reached the interview itself. Typically, we want to be professional, but as we've said a few times now, be honest, be you. We're much more fragile and harder to get a read on if we're trying to be something we're not. So even if we're not really trying to sell like communication or adaptability skills necessarily, the interview is a natural test of these skills. So do your best to kind of read the room and gauge what kind of atmosphere the interview and possibly the company itself has. You might even be able to pick up on like body language from the interviewer that shows whether the person is interested in more details or might be ready to kind of move on to their next question, which would be your cue to kind of wrap up your current story. Additionally, you want to do your best to show enthusiasm for this job opportunity. We've already discussed things like asking questions about the company and the job itself, but there's also kind of verbal ways or body language to show enthusiasm here as well. There's that component. Appearing well prepared is another thing that can help us with showing enthusiasm as well. And as the interview looks to be ending, try to wrap things up with purpose. Restate your intention towards applying to this position and this company and what you feel like you could be bringing to the position. Be sure to thank the person interviewing you for their time and ask about what the next steps of the process are. That can help you show that interest, as we've mentioned. Now, there are a few things that we might want to keep in mind as part of this interview and this whole selling yourself process. Now, remember, the interview is a conversation, so try not to take over it with long stories. Make sure that you're getting main points across in timely manner and that the person that's interviewing you has openings to either ask for more details or if they want to move on to what they want to discuss next. Additionally, don't be so focused on telling your stories that you had prepared that you start segueing into them when you're unprompted. It's all fine and dandy to use unrelated experience to sell skills or aspects of yourself that they're asking about, but always be mindful that you are answering the questions that they are asking and you haven't gotten off track. There is a delicate balance between selling ourselves in an interview and taking over it with self-promotion. But you can keep in mind, as long as you keep in mind that the interview needs some kind of back and forth between you and the person interviewing you to really make it a conversation, that you are answering certain questions, you should be able to find that balance. Doing some mock interviews prior to the official interview can help us here out as well. So before we wrap up today, there are some additional things I'd like to make note of. The job hunt can be rough. Believe me, I know. There are times that it feels like its own full-time job. And to properly sell ourselves, we have to put in like all this consideration that we've been talking about, from the job listing to the resume to the interview, like picking out all the themes, all serving a narrative. The entire process should be something that is done for each job application. And it's time consuming. It's a lot, I know. But I promise if we do it, especially for the jobs that we're really after, it will pay off. It will increase our chances, but do be aware that some silence and negative responses are kind of just part of the process, unfortunately. But selling ourselves effectively increases our chances. So show resilience. After all, most employers are seeking that from their employees in the first place. All right. So in the end, selling ourselves is about bringing our best selves to the attention of the employer, and then going into detail about our skills and experiences in ways that the company will find appealing. We need to be creating a narrative for each application that we are making, with the themes being established all the way back in the job listing. During our talk today, much of our approach was from the perspective of college students or maybe some college graduates, but everything we've discussed can be applied to any level of experience or achievements for your future jobs. And finally, for anyone who would like additional information or to dig deeper into the process of writing resumes or preparing for interviews, do be sure to check out Wake Tech's Career Services. They can absolutely help you out with that kind of process. All right, so that does bring us to a close here today, at least for this session. I hope everyone enjoys the conference and all the other talks that we have here today. And I hope that this was an informative one to get us started. We do have, if anyone doesn't have anywhere to be, I can provide any extra information if people are interested in any comments that anyone has or questions with our last few minutes here. Yeah, absolutely. Happy this has helped. And I think we'll go ahead and wrap up then. I do, again, hope everyone has enjoyed this talk and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day.